Okay, putting it together, Elixir plus gRPC, and we're having the talk today, the 8th day of May 2021, and it's not just a talk. It's supposed to be a practical session where we get to follow through the code and see exactly how these things are done, and be able to possibly replicate this or learn one or two things if you already know. And if we already know all that we do today, we can then possibly ask questions or help other people get on par with what you're doing. So what you need in your system for us to move forward would be Elixir. You need to install Protobuf. You need to also install Elixir Protobuf. So because we're working with Elixir, we need an Elixir Protobuf for the connection to Protobuf in order for us to generate the files we need in order for us to do the integrations. The link was added to the talk description, so you can get yourself ready. What are we doing through this period, this 1 hour period? We'll be looking at building a blog post service, and which exposes a gRPC server. And also, we're going to build a client which is going to connect to that gRPC server to get blog posts, create a blog post, perform actions that are accepted via the contract, right? And to start that, we need to ask what's gRPC first. So gRPC is basically a modern high-performance RPC framework that can run on any platform or any environment. And at the center of all of this, we have what we call Protobuf. And before that, the diagram to your right, you can see a gRPC server, and you can have you see gRPC stop on the other side, which are basically clients. And these clients can be anything. Say you have a service like ours today, which is the blog service, a blog post service. So you can have clients from, say, Ruby, say, Elixir. It can be Java, whatever clients you have in it. I think currently about 9 or 10 are officially supported, but you have other community integrations. I think Elixir's own is a community integration, so it's not officially supported. So Protobuf buffers, they're simply neutral, language neutral, platform neutral, extensible mechanism for serializing structured data. So let's say you can compare this to things like JSON, compare it to GraphQL, the way it's done. But in this sense, protobuffers are actually very efficient because they change your data from whatever it is, readable data to near machine binaries, and that gets transmitted to the client or the server in order for you to perform the action you need. So in that way, they are very efficient, and they are always and most likely, almost all the time using, together with gRPC. So at the center of all of this is a proto file. We talked about installing Protobuf in your system. So, and at the center of everything is a proto file. And this proto file simply defines the fields, the messages you want, the fields you're having in those messages, and in a particular hierarchy with which you want them. So you want to be able to put your most important stuff up and be able to make sure you give them the proper type are kind of static. So you have to make sure you can go through the Protobuf website to see all the scalar types and all the norms and everything you can use as types. And to the far left, you can see the required, optional. So these are, by default, is optional. So if you want it to be optional, you can just not put the required, and you can leave it there. So that takes us to the main thing. Let's go in and see what we can do. For us to start this, since you are working with Elixir, it means that we need to create a new Elixir application. So I've gone ahead to do that, which I call Post Proto. So Post Proto is basically going to be the application that holds a contract for our post service gRPC server. And in that application, we created a newly created Elixir application, which we just type mix new and the project name, application name, and in that application, we're going to bring in gRPC, and we're getting it from this repo. This will be pushed to GitHub and shared immediately after the talk. so you can actually go through the code and see if there are things you missed during the talk. Then we're going to need cowlib, which is actually part of the requirement for the first dependency. Then we're going to bring in Google Protos, which is like the default client, right? And the next thing we're going to do is to define our proto file, so proto definition. So I went ahead to do that, so I'm just going to go through it. At the top of it is for you to put the syntax, so we're picking up syntax, and it's proto3 we're using. And at the end, immediately after that, we have to do some namespacing, which you have it here as package post service API. So moving forward, we're going to see how this plays a part as we move forward. Then the next thing is for us to define our services. So what we're building is a post service. So we call it post service. And in that post service, you can have RPC calls for to list your posts, to get posts, to get users posts. Yeah. So let's say I post post that I made myself. So you can actually use my ID to get only posts made by me. Then you can also use the same service to create a post, edit a post, and you can extend it to delete a post, do other things you want to do in your service. So depending on what you have in your service, you can expose as much as you want. So, and each of the endpoints will have a request object and also a return object. And you have to define all of that. So I've gone ahead to do that. So for my list post request, it doesn't require any parameter. So that has been done. And for my list response request, it actually returns a list of posts. So what I've done is to use repeated, and I've to return the post message encapsulated as posts. So if I go down here, I defined, this is what the post message looked like. It was already defined here. It was here, right? So basically, it tells you, okay, a post is going to have an ID, a title, a slug. It's going to have a content, and also created by or posted by. I think I added one by mistake. So you define exactly what you want to expose, what the endpoint is going to expose, or what the object is going to carry. So the next thing is for us to do the same for get post response, which takes in an argument, which is just the post ID. And the same thing happens for get post. This is get post request, and the same thing happens for get post response, which returns the post object and also encapsulated as post. Then we go ahead to do the same thing for every other endpoint we want, right? So once all of this is done, we have to then generate the Elixir specific clients codes required for us to do the integration. And that is really simple and straightforward. So we're going to type on our terminal. If you have the files already defined on your terminal, let me just open this up. We're going to type something like proto C. This is working because we installed protobuf at the beginning of this, and we're doing the Elixir thing there, and we're putting it Elixir out as a plugin, and we are doing gRPC. We want to generate this code into our lib folder, and my proto definition is inside a protocol folder. So you can have as much as 10, 20 proto definition or different files, containing different proto definitions inside that folder or any folder of your choice. So in this case, I just have one. So I can quickly just say, I can just do protocol slash posts dot proto. I don't know what that's there. What's happening? So I can just do this. Proto. call slash, I'll just say all. I think I made a mistake. Okay, I spelled out wrongly. Okay. Okay, so the codes are generated for us, and if you go to our labs folder, you're going to see a protocol folder, and you're going to see post.pb.ex. In here, we're going to have all these definitions, more like interfaces, right? Where we're going to have all the types and everything defined for us the Elixir way, and in which we can then bring in this project as a dependency for other projects. So we can see this. We can see this, and we can see the gRPC stop service. So the next, after we've done this, the next thing for us to do is to create a server, the gRPC server. 1 second, please. Okay, the gRPC server, and I still went ahead to create the server, the service itself. So the project name was, I created post service. So you can do the same thing. It's basically mix, new, then you can do your post service. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then once you've done that, you can go ahead to bring in the dependencies you need. So I'm going to use Ecto. So I brought in Ecto SQL, and also brought in Postgres, which is required to communicate with Postgres database. Then I brought in JSON, whatever that is the name we call it. So in order to help me serialize the structs, errors specifically. Then I brought in Slugify, basically to help me just slug the title to a slug content. This is not required depending on what you're doing. Then I also brought in the post proto, which is basically I'm using the path which I created before here. So you can push this to GitHub, and you can bring it in as Git, and you put the path or wherever you're going to keep it. So that you can do. So once you've done this and you've done mix install, you can then go ahead to do your. Okay, so we can. I guess I had explained the dependencies, and it was clear. So let's move forward. So just like every other Elixir application, you can then build your service. So in this case, I have a post service that's inside my libs. I have the post service, and inside there I have my post, which comes with normal and schema, everything that you need to do to make sure that, just assume you're working with maybe like Phoenix or anything else. So you have the entire service done, and this can work with or without gRPC, right? So, and you have the entire context done, and you can have all your endpoints ready here. It can work with or without gRPC. Then the next thing is for us to be able to configure gRPC to work with our application. So for us to do that, we have to create, we have to add gRPC to part of to the supervisor to start at the beginning of the when the project starts. So to this as a child to the supervisor. So we bring it in and we give it a port. And in that regard, we need an endpoint. So we create an endpoint, and in my project, I've created it in here. So in the endpoint folder, I just use gRPC endpoint. Then I can intercept just gRPC logger server, and also I can run my server, which I've gone ahead to create in here. So so in my gRPC server, what I've done is for me to use gRPC server. Then the service I'm using is actually post service API. Remember we had to define the namespace earlier. So I'm using that namespace here, and I'm calling post service, which is like the only service we created in that particular file, and we're calling service. Then I'm also calling my post block context, which is part of the application already. Then in here, I'm bringing in other functions from the gRPC definition that I need to use in order for me to get the contract out there. And part of the things we had done was for us to create gRPC methods for list post, which is supposed to return all the posts or a list of posts in our post context. And basically, we call this, and if it is nil, we just return an empty response. If we have a value, we can then pass it through list post response dot new, and we pass it through. Remember, we encapsulated it in post, so we put post, and you can then pass the corresponding list of posts you generated. I had to do this because I was having some errors, so I had to remove the struct and turn it to a map in order for it to work smoothly. I really didn't have time to check why the error was happening. So basically, this happens, right? So this is basically a list of maps, which is then passed into this and then sent back to the client once it's requested. We've done the same thing for getting posts. So sorry, I have some things I used in the process. Okay, so if you have this is the argument, so you pass it to get post, which is basically an ID, and the ID you're going to then if it is null, you return an empty response again. If you have a value, it is wrong. If you have a value, return the value, and I had to do the same thing in order for the error to still go. Then the same thing happens for creating a post. So, and you can repeat it for as much endpoints as you're making available, right? Also remember that implementing gRPC, you can run tests on them. You can load balance the service. You can do every other thing you need to do as you would do for every other service in order for you to have your application running stable. And also, while I was explaining this, I had to create a config folder, which in my config folder, I brought in the repo, and also I automatically, let's assume you're using mix release. So once you run the command start, you should also start the gRPC server. Then also I brought in other configuration files. So my development configuration is this, and sorry, I had to just hardcode this and comment out the endpoints, the environment variables, and you can have similar stuff for your production, and you can have configuration too for your testing. So for this, I had created a test for them. I'm not sure if it covers the gRPC file, but I know that the entire post context has been tested. So we can do, let me see this, mix env test, and I'll just do mix test. Oh, I have the server already running, so I'll just shut it down and go back and run the test so we can see how that works. So this is something you already know. So a test has been done, and it's no failure. So once all of this is done, we're just going to run the server. So IEX, and running mix, and voila. Our server is running on port 4040. This we defined inside applications. So we're starting the endpoint and we're giving it a port of 4040. So it means that if anybody wants to connect to our service, they have to connect through port 4040. And because we're running on localhost, we're having this. So you can do localhost colon 4040. or if you're using 127.0.0.1, you can do all of that and get it to work. So that is the part two of it. The next thing is for us to test and see how we can make calls to the gRPC server and get response back. And for us to do that, I created a new Elixir application. And at this time, we're calling it post client. So this is basically, it could be anything. It could be your, let's assume your service provided statistics. For instance, you have an endpoint that can allow somebody to get the total number of posts that have been made by a particular person. So maybe your dashboard can make a request. So your dashboard service or whatever that is can call that particular gRPC, the post service gRPC endpoint to get the stats for a particular user, right? So in this case, I just created post clients. So the goal is for us to be able to demonstrate the connection between the client and the service itself, right? Remember that at the very beginning, we created a proto file, and we used that file to generate the language-dependent, language-specific codes required for us to, do the communication. So we're going to still also create a new file, a new project called post client, and in our dependency, we're going to bring in that, and I'm still bringing in this to help me serialize error. Then here we're not doing much, no configuration, because we just want to use the proto files and make the calls to the gRPC service, and that should happen seamlessly. So in here we have post clients, and it's just the default file that comes with when you create a new Elixir application. So in here we bring in post service API post service.stop. So the client actually uses the stop, which is what the client will use to connect to the server, the gRPC stop. Then we also bring in all the functions we need in order for us to be able to make the, infer the proper type and make the requests we need to make the way we need to make them. Then in here, assuming I had an env, I would call this, or I would just use the default. I had coded localhost, and remember our server is running on port 4040. So we go ahead to create a post function, create post function, which takes an argument. This argument is basically a map of all the things we need to create a post. So the map is going to carry, the argument is going to carry the post title, the post, that is just as it was defined here. So it's going to carry, so create post request requires title, slug, content, created by, and posted by, right? So we're going to create a map. We're going to provide, the function is going to take a map of those parameters, and we're going to initiate a connection using gRPC stop connect, and we pass in the URL, that's the server URL. Then we're going to initiate the connection itself, and we're going to pass in, we're going to try to create a request. When we create the request, we check if it matches what it should be, and once that is successful, we should be able to make the call to the gRPC server, which we use stop. And remember, we create post on the server, so we call the function directly. At this point, it feels as if you're just calling a function as part of your application, so you don't have to bring in, start dealing with, how do you put this? Dealing with, HTTP libraries, trying to serialize and do everything is just done straightforward for you. It's like you're calling a function in your application. So you make the call. And once you make the call, you get once you make the call, if the response comes back okay, and you check if the okay comes back with what it should come back with, which is create post response, and inside it you should have a post, and also the post should be able to carry the post map. Then if that is it, then you just return okay and the post. So if there is an error, in my case, I specifically targeted the error message 2, which is 3, which is I think unprocessed, and which I specified on the back end, and I passed the error the error. In this case, it's my change set errors, and which I will then just use this to decode and make it available for you to see in case something happens and the post did not create successfully. And if there is any other error, I will just tell you that, oh, sorry, something happens. You can be creative with your stuff and try to make sure you cover as much error as possible in order for you not to provide things that are not helpful for people consuming your endpoint or working with you. So we repeat the same process for listing to list the post, and the same thing, we connect to the server. And once we connect to the server, we can then initiate the request, get the response just the way we did before, and we can then just return a value if the response comes back okay. So we just return a value. The same thing. So get post requires an ID. So we pass in an ID, and we just follow through the same process. So integration becomes really, really easy, right? So before now, I had done this. I created. I'm going to delete all the data I already have in my DB, and make sure that so we can just continue. Or I really don't need to do that, so I can just move forward. Let me start the server again, and the client was running before. Let me stop it, and I'll start it again. So at this point, I want to create the post. So I already have this. So this is, let's assume we're having post lines, and we're having the method, the function as create post, and it's taking an argument. And in this case, you can see that this is a map. The argument is a map, and the map has content, which is this, an ID, well, not required here, posted by a slug, the title for the post. So we go ahead and just create it. I'm going to just copy this. So if you do this, you're going to have a response. So the response is simple. The response is simple, which is okay, and the post, which is what we had done here. So this is what we did. So the initial gRPC server had returned those similar stuff. We had okay and the post. So we just confirmed that this was what came in using the case. Then we return the same thing. So in here you can see that post gRPC post service API dot post has been returned, right? And it comes with okay. So if you are calling this, if you have this client in any application and you're calling it, you expect that you're going to have this, or if an error comes back, you're going to have, instead of having okay tuple, you're going to have okay and the post as a tuple, you're going to have an error and also the error message as a tuple. So that being said, let me try to simulate if there is an error. Let me assume this. Okay, so in this case, you can see I did pass in a title to be blank, empty string, and the server tells me that, oh, error processing your request details title, and the title had an error which is can't be blank, right? And I hope this explains exactly how that works. Then we can follow through to make calls. I had created other posts, so I can just run other ones. So this brings back a list of all the posts I've created. There's not been any pagination. There's no limit. So as much posts as I create, it will just bring it back to me. It's a test application, so we have that. Then if I want to get a specific post, I can just do post clients, get posts, and I can pass in an ID. Say I'm passing in an ID of 7, and Okay, in this case, we have an error. I really don't know what that is, so I'm going to check what the error message is. Okay, I think while cleaning up the code, I had done something wrong. So, what's this? I think the error here is happening. This is supposed to work fine. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah, this is supposed to work fine. Okay, but okay, I think I'm supposed to have .id, I guess. Yeah. So let me start the server because there's no auto reload. So I'll start the server again and I run the same command. Yes, that was the problem. So I was supposed to have .id in order for me to pass it because this expects an ID, not a map of anything. So in all, we've been able to demonstrate how you can create a service and expose a gRPC endpoint, and also how you can create another service, which is a client that connects to that gRPC endpoint in order to get or send, either create an effect or receive data, as the case may be, depending on what your service is or what you're doing. Then why do we even need to use gRPC in the first place? In the past, people are still doing this, not in the past. People are still doing this. So you can have different services. Let's say you're starting a new project and that is supposed to be an MVP, and you build a single application with you alone or you and your friend, and using Phoenix, and you have that monolith up and running, and everything is cool, everything is fine. Then all of a sudden you start having revenues and you start increasing the offering, adding new services, adding new stuff to it, and your team increases, and you want to be able to benefit directly from the increase in team members, and you don't want them to work in conflicting environments. You want to separate the concerns, and I'm not trying to explain to you why you need to use microservice here. So, but let's assume you know the reason and you like the idea and you want to just break the teams apart and make them work in independent silos, right? And at the end of the day, you want to be able to make sure that all your services can come together in an efficient way. And gRPC gives you that option, which compared to other options, the network traffic is going to be lower, the speed is going to be faster, and you're going to have a very stable service-to-service communication. And you can also do service-to-client. You can have gRPC clients for Android, iOS, and also for I think JavaScript. Although I've never used that, I've always used gRPC for service-to-service communication. And I think today I default to maybe GraphQL for service-to-client communication, right? The benefit really goes into how simple it is and how strict, because it's static type as you would have something like GraphQL, but not as loose as what you have, doing normal HTTP connections with maybe JSON. Then it becomes a solid foundation for you to know that, whatever I'm asking for is going to be what I'm getting. And if the contract doesn't specify it, I'm not going to have it. And if the person implementing the contract is not implementing well, it's not going to work. So if it is working, it's going to be working, and if it's not working, it's not going to be working. So at this point, I think I've been able to explain all of this. I guess I made the time mark. I would then be able to answer questions if there are things that were not clear, things you would like to know that I did not cover. And if you were also trying as much as possible to code along with me, I wasn't coding really. I was just showing you code I already had done. So we can then discuss all of that and see how we make progress. Thank you.